beautiful morning to be heading out. We're on our way to Virginia this week. Headed up that way, be up there, coming back in a few days. But y'all come along the ForestApps road with us this week. Day one with the coaches from Virginia DOT. We're at a little forestry camp type of setup, headquarters outside of Gillwyn, Virginia. We've got 10 guys in class this week, and today we were all inside working on kind of going through the details on the board. Next couple of days we're going to be out in a forested area working on some trees, creating some storm situations. Then the guys will be doing some presentations. Their job is going to be going back and putting it to work with new employees, doing refreshers with those that have already gone through somewhat of their basic training program. So looking forward to it. It was a great day. Looking forward to tomorrow. Start on that corner closest to you, right there. Look into that top slot as you come around. Go. Okay. Now, set it off. The flat. Put your saw up there in the face notch, all the way against the flat. All the way to the back of it. Look at where look at where your notch is now. There you go. All the way against the back. Now lift it up like your top cut. See, this is the front line of your hinge. So you're going to put your saw back in there to the front line of that hinge, okay? Okay. Now look down that line and tell me where you're aimed. Okay? That's the same tone, that tick-tick. Now take your tip of your bar and cut the other one off over there. All you got to cut is what's not cut on the other side. Okay. Now we're going to place another wedge in here. You have to be careful when you make a back cut like that double, because you leave a kerf there. When your wedge tip gets to it, it's going to try to stop. So now we're going to drive that one in just a little bit. And now we can start to drive this one. And you hit this one a couple times, hit that one a couple times. See how loose that one is now? And now go back to the next one over here. All right, so I want you to tighten this one closest to you now. Look straight down that line. Where'd it go? Oh, actually this one on that one. If you put it back up this way, you're using that one. Where'd the tree go?
Right there where it says one go.
Right there where it was aimed. So what does that tell you about the hinge? It may break from the back, but it's going to hold on the front.
So let's look at score on it though. That could help even things out a little bit.
Oh, hey.
So we have information. Did he have a good plan? Huh?
Yeah.
He did, didn't he? And he pretty much worked his plan, didn't he? So that's 10 points there. Target. I would have to say that he was right in line with that other oak back there. I'm gonna say he hit target. Tap this some more. Just tap this some more and you can loosen it. All right. Now you want to move it around closer to your hinge. And that gives you more lift.
You don't want to be on that side, do you?
Well, I mean, really you don't have to worry about too much over there. You're not going to stand over there necessarily. All right, that's tight. Now you can drive the one farthest here. You want me to drive? You good?
I'm all right. I need some more weed. There you go. What's that?
Don't forget your screen. Going? Huh? When you see it moving on your own, where are you going? When you cut in far like that though, you got a notch that's not very far open, and now you've cut in halfway into the tree, so it makes it tough to bore cut it, doesn't it? So now you got to have some way to push it, don't you? Let's do this. Let's put a slide all the way through the face notch. We'll put a wedge in on the back, cut this side, and go back to that side. Okay? I want you to bore through the face notch, straight through to the back.
Right through the middle.
Right through the middle. Okay? Grab your saw. Now listen. You can't do a whole lot of wiggling. You got to go straight through the middle. All right, let's do it. Now we're going to put a wedge in here. Where's our... So now we're going to take the saw, just cut here, leaving 1 inch hinge, just under the edge there. Let me stick it. Okay, just on the edge of it, cut up to 1 inch. Don't cut the wedge, just under the edge. Just under the edge of the wedge and cut in. Go. Oh! You gotta leave an inch hinge. Go the other side now. Alright. Now we're gonna drive this over. You set the saw off. Let's go. Come on. Back up. So we had a good hinge on that side, but he got a little skinny on this side over here. Luckily, that was your bad side first, wasn't it? And, you know, I mentioned this yesterday, or maybe this morning. If I tell you to do something, you got to forget what you were thinking. So it's you know, for training purposes, that's one thing for me to kind of missobobulate you a little bit. But when you walk up to something like this, you got to have a clear picture of what you're going to do. And if you're supervising somebody or teaching somebody, they have to have a clear picture of what they're going to do. Okay? So if they don't, what should that person do? If you're not quite clear what somebody's asking you to do, what should you do?
Ask questions.
You have to ask questions. You have to figure out exactly, because you have to be clear on what's happening right here, because next week I'm not going to be here, right? So you have to start thinking about the thing we talked about a couple times. Somebody had that technique that came about. We call it a small back leaner, and it came actually from a man down in Mississippi. We were doing demonstrations, and we were going down to a creek bed. Soren had dropped these big poplar trees the other way, swinging them around. The American Pulpit Association had put them together, the demonstrations, and we were down on a creek bank, walked back out, and they had barbecue sack lunches for us. We come back out, and there was when the guys had punched the road in back there for the people to walk down, they had pushed one pine tree back over like this. It's about this big around. And we walked back out, and a bunch of loggers said, "Hey, Soren, let's see you take that one back that way, Swede." And Soren looked at it, kind of laughed a little bit. And we got up there and we sat down and was eating. This man came up there and he said, "What that pine tree back there, I got a technique, you can take that over." And Soren said, "Oh, really?" And he said, "Yeah, me and my dad, we used to work fence lines." And he said, "My dad'd take his old Homelight XL12 and he'd put the face notch in, bore through it, and he'd put a hickory wedge in the back of it. He'd cut one side, then cut the other, and drive it back over into the people's property that we was working for." And that's where that technique came from. I had it all drawn out on a paper sack. And the next week we were up in Meade Paper in Tennessee. But what the little fella didn't tell us was, you got to think about this wedge gets thicker and thicker, doesn't it? So as you go through there, you always want to rebore this through there, just the thickness of the hinge. And then that way you don't pop it off when you drive it back through. So very important to think about that. But you got to have hinge on there. If you take the hinge off of it, you got issues. It can go anywhere. It can spin around on that other side 360 degrees very quickly. But that's a unique technique. Alongside the road, stuff like that, after storms where you got them kind of curled over, you know, after the wind has kind of fixed them, you can be able to take it back the other way pretty easy, as long as you got good fiber. But you don't want to go much side weight with that. You want to be completely against the back lean. But we made it down, I guess. Yep. Huh? So what we have on a score on this one. With a tree this size and a little bit smaller, you don't have much forgiveness, do you? You don't have much playroom. You got to have it right. So if you don't control your saw, you can end up losing control of it very quickly. So, Hunter, we had information on. He had a good plan, huh? Target-wise, a little bit off, about 6 feet. And we had height was to the first green limbs. Is that right? Huh?
Yeah.
Pretty good on that. And stump, missed the hinge on that side a little bit. The rest of it was my fault. Chain parts.
You got the top,
Top,
the
side,
chisel,
point. If you're thinking about sharpening this chain, that top angle is this angle. You go from the inside to the outside, keeping a 25-degree angle on this particular chain. Underneath that, the round portion of the top of the file makes that 45. It's actually 50 to 55 on the chisel angle. Okay?
Where the first big crotch up there where the fork comes off to this side?
Yeah. Don't forget your shield too. If you ever eat one of those wedges, you'll know it.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Hit the one on top. That one's up against the hinge.
All right.
Well, you got to get up, pick it up, put it in between there now.
Maybe tomorrow. Well, you took all your steam today? You got that right. Good shade. The height sticking up pretty good. Whew. You're making the leak.
But this is what I'm talking about. You know, when you have to cut, you got to think about keeping in the same position, because what happens is you try to wedge, it can't go up over it.
Yeah.
And so you end up busting up wedges and you limit your ability to drive. Remember, I had David this morning, he started on this side, came all the way around, one single motion. Because when you take a bar out and put it back in, you'll always create another curve. So that's what I always said, don't take your saw out. Because if you just take it out just a little bit, you leave a curve in there you might need later.
What about coming
Well,
from the outside?
let's look at this. If you go from the outside, and the only thing on this one is about borderline, but when you come from the outside, you're going to get into here before you even start a wedge decent.
No, I ain't talking about that. I'm talking about you bore it.
Uh-huh.
You pull your saw out, and drive your wedge, and
Well, you can't drive your wedge right here, because why?
where your bar's gonna be.
You don't have any lift.
I got you.
So you got to get back here some. So one thing you could do on this one is you could bore all the way through, because you can reach all the way through. Now place your wedge in here.
I got you.
That way you've got one single lifting point.
Okay.
And you don't want to use your whole bar anytime to go in here, because if it sits down, you're stuck. So if you take the tip and just cut what's not cut, and originally you stopped, I can't see it now, somewhere right in here.
Yes.
So you had all of this wood still holding. You could have come back and turned and left just a little bit there and would have held that tree.
I got you.
And then you got a flat surface there.
So you could have went in all the way with your bar like that,
All the way.
and then come back out halfway and cut it all the way out, then
Yeah.
put your wedge in, then cut this little piece when
Yeah.
you was ready to let it go.
And it doesn't take that big corner right there. You can leave that little piece right there and it won't sit back.
I got you.
Because what's supporting the side weight?
Your hinge.
Your hinge.
But you can go in right here and cut back all the way here and leave
Yeah.
whichever side.
Yeah, whichever side you want. You can turn it this way, turn it that way. Just make
Then
sure.
once you get there, then you can pull your saw out. And if you need to go to that side and do it, or this side, you can do it.
Exactly.
Drive it until it gets tight, then take that little nick out, and if you need to drive it up some more, then it's already still flat across there.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing when you put a wedge in. If you and you know, this is kind of a borderline tree, because look how much wedge we got to the back and we're against the hinge.
Wait a minute, let me get my foot out.
So that's just not. Oh, back up. We had a super day today. All the guys were able to cut a tree. We had some 3 or 4 large hardwoods and some smaller ones, and we got them all laid down for the piles for the next couple of days here, and looking forward being able to set it all up and really be able to work like storm situations. So the guys did a great job. We had one tree had probably about 5 feet of back lean. They were amazed to be able to take that back over, and we had some pretty good side leans, and so everything worked out really good today. And I'm excited about this group. They've really paid close attention and been able to work things out. So looking forward to some pressures and binds tomorrow, and then we're going to start doing some presentations. So today, day 3,
Finished up today. Had a little bit of a weather issue this morning. It really stormed there for a while, but we stayed inside till about lunchtime, going down through planting processes on horizontal and hung trees. And then we took and after lunch went out, did a little demonstration on different bucking techniques and using the horizontal plan. And then we worked on some reduced downtime, maintenance check on the saws, getting their equipment ready for tomorrow. Tomorrow morning we're going to start out, and I've got piles marked, and they'll be working with those on bucking and limbing and getting all of the storm situations cleared up. So tomorrow it's pressures and binds and spring poles and hangers and those kinds of things. And the weather's supposed to be great tomorrow, so looking forward to it. And we'll update you tomorrow evening sometime. Today was a big day. We had really good weather actually started off this morning, and we were able to get right out to the wood site. And I had set up some piles for the guys. One of them was a hanger that we had the day before, and so they had to work a little bit to get that one down. And then we had one big hardwood that was fell down, the crotch was actually cracked, and they had a lot of weight and a lot of pressure there, so they had to really work on that. It got stuck a little bit, so we got to be able to work on that a little. But then they had two other large hardwoods on the hillside that we worked on to try to get the pressures out of those. One had a couple of little challenges to it, but they worked through it pretty well today. And so all 5 teams came through with that with flying colors. And then we came back to the classroom. We started going down through what should actually be in their training programs. In other words, if they had topics that they thought was the most important, you know, we kind of outlined as to if you had 45 minutes that you were going to be able to spend passing information to someone, what topic would you start with? What would you really emphasize? And so we talked through that a little bit, came up with a list of them, and then the guys started in their teams putting together an outline and some training ideas to put across tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to be actually doing presentations, so the guys will be taking those topics and putting them in a little bit of training format. So that'd be pretty cool. We plan to go back out to the woods to do that, but I don't know, may have some more rain coming in, but we'll see. But I'll update you after that's all finished, and I think things are gonna finish up pretty good this week. So talk to you later.
Why is that stopping right there? Don't stop. Finish the cut. Oh! Just to the top of your bore cut.
Have us a piece clear and out the way. That way you can get in here in that hole. That way we can cut the rest of that top out. Like I said, first thing first, we'll get the spring pole out the way, and then we'll proceed.
Probably ain't got it.
Oh!
did go through a little bit.
Well, did it go through the fibers, or it just twisted around and got it?
Around. Actually, the fibers are
Fibers
still
not cut.
Actually, if you look in here, this back layer is actually
Solid.
solid right
So
there.
what happened there is it twisted around. So how important is it for you to have all of your buckles buckled?
Check the other leg, get some fiber coming out the other leg.
Well, I think it's because we had this up under it, and if you just pull through it, that's
Yeah.
Everybody, and I mean, some of y'all are gonna be familiar with a lot of stuff, and some of you aren't. And we're gonna start off. We're gonna go over the parts of the chain tooth and explain those parts to you, and then we're gonna do a little the RDT, which is run down time. We're gonna go over that with you on how to check your saw out and what you need to do, and then we're gonna go into sharpening and a little bit on the run part of the saw. So anyway, first off, I want to go over the actual parts of this, and I'd like to explain to you. A lot of people will call this a drag. I mean, if you fool with the saw and everything, that's what you're gonna call it. But the fundamental name of it is the depth gauge, and what this does, as this chain goes down, it runs along the wood and allows this tooth to go in a certain amount to pull that chip out. And the depth is like 25, and as it runs along, it allows this tooth to come along like that and peel that piece of wood out, and it keeps the chain from just digging right down. It holds it up.
Check your tighten the adjustment on your chain here. When you pull it up, you want to grab one tooth, pull up. You should see about 3 of your guides under there. That's how you know you got it about right. And you ain't got to wrench it down and step on it and get your nuts real tight. Just get them nice and snug, and they'll stay pretty tight.
You'll see that this does not fit in that tooth at all. So this is for a different size saw. So you need to make sure you got the right equipment. This particular chain right here is going to take like that one's a little bit small too. It needs to stick up above the tooth about 1/4 of the saw. That'll work right there pretty good. But anyway, this is the right size for that. All right, this particular one, it lays down on the tops of these teeth right here, and this particular file right here works on your drag. And this file right here works on the drag. So when you push this forward, well, I mean your depth gauge. Excuse me. Anyway, you lay this on here, and this angle right here and this angle right here is perpendicular to your bar, and this keeps your angle right. So, and if you don't want to hit your drag every time, I noticed this from Tim the other day. He kind of tilted it a little bit and slid this across here until he got this tooth looking right. And you want to make sure that the chrome is all intact. If you see any blemishes in the face of that chisel right there on the top angle, it's not going to cut real good. So what you do is you hit it back and forth like this till you get it like you want it, and then you drop it back down on your drag and hit it a couple more times to get your your depth gauge at the right height to make this thing cut good.
This thing's also got a guide on the front of it here. This right here, when you sit it down in there, let's see what you want. It sits right here on this other guide, on this other depth gauge right here, and this wood keeps it flat cutting across there, so your depth gauge ain't cut in at an angle or it ain't cut off to the side. It keeps it pretty flat.
And then this is another type of depth gauge that you can place on here, and that will sit right there, and then you take this particular flat file and you can work on these gauges. It lays right on top of the tooth, and you can file that thing down like that and get that exactly like you want. But that's a drop gauge. Does anybody want to see your outfit clean? And then what we're going to do is we're going to start the saw up. And these new saws with the auto tune and stuff in them, you have to get them going and let them set, and let it sit there and idle for like 90 seconds so that it adjusts the carburetor and everything. And then you can check it out, and you do a high you open it wide open, and it should come up and wind up and then have a little bit of a flutter to it. And if it does that, it's adjusted right. It isn't too lean or went over with the reduced downtime. We're going to check your air filter again. Say you're not, you go over your saw and then you're out there and you want to check it before you start cutting in the morning. Just go on and make sure your air filter's clean. That's one of the top things you can do. And then we're going to start this saw up. And some of these new saws, you have to let them sit there and idle a little bit before they adjust. And then open your saw up wide open, and and make sure that when it comes up to the top, it's got like it'll kind of pan out just a little bit, but it won't be exactly smooth. If it goes way up and just keeps winding, it's running too lean. Something's going on. Your air filter, you're getting too much air. So you got different adjustments on here, but we won't get into that on the run part of it. Then you want to check that high flutter, and then you want to make sure that your chain isn't moving. And whenever you start your saw, you want to have your chain brake on. You don't want your chain to just take off flying. And anyway, and then checking, and then you want to check after you get it running, you want to check your saw and let it idle like that, and then move it around into all positions and make sure that it will stay in idle in that position, and make sure that. And then the very last thing you want to do is you want to gas it a couple times and make sure that it doesn't hesitate. You want it to open right on up and go up to full throttle. So anyway, Taylor's going to demonstrate this for us.
This saw here is not one of the carbureted ones, so this is just got the choke, full choke, half choke on it. So.
I guess that includes run time. Anybody got any questions on that? A lot of saws are different.
Active forces are going to be 4 different points on this bar and chain. Right here, coming from the bottom of a log, you're going to be getting pushed back. Coming from right here, from the top of the log going down, you're going to get pulled to the piece of wood. Right here on your top of your tip is going to be where your kickback comes from. And down here is where you're going to want to start at. And the 4 different points might not sound like much, but the biggest thing is being ready for what that saw is capable of doing using those points. When you use the top and it's going to push you, you want to make sure you have a good stance, because if you're just relaxed and if it pushes you back, you can fall down the hill, trip over limbs, whichever. When you go and cutting from the top of a log using the bottom, it can pull you to it. So if you're not prepared and you're just hanging out, and when that thing grabs and pulls, you could possibly fall over the bar and chain while it's turning. The other point is for your kickback. If you aren't prepared for it, it's going to surprise you, and you're never really prepared for it. But if you know what to expect using that point on your bar, you're ahead of the game.
But before we go throwing this tree down through this gap, we need to know, will this tree fit in this gap? So, luckily for me this week, I learned a very inexpensive tool that's right over here in the woods with us. We can pick up a stick. As we pick this stick up, we can take a look at our tree. But guess what? All sticks are different. Everybody's built different. So we have to look at each other. And the general rule of thumb, if you can hold this stick in your hand, reach back and touch your cheek, is the proper fit for you. Now we want to lay this tree in this direction. We will take his stick, place your hand at the bottom of the tree. Once you back up and that tree fits within this stick with your hand being at the bottom and the top of the tree reaches the top of this stick, we know approximately how far this tree is going to land, when it lands, where it's going to land at. I still got to go back a bit more. This is telling me, what I'm looking at right now, the top of the tree will land approximately within a few feet of this spot right here. Will that tree fit here? Okay, as we look at that, we look at this tree as well. I'm gonna mark your stick right here. This is where we think the top of it will land. Things to take into consideration of this tree, I'm gonna have David step out here with me. As we look at this tree from this target area, what do we need to take in consideration at this point? Exactly. Is this tree leaning one way or the other? David, can you tell us which way this tree is leaning?
All right, what you're gonna do is you're gonna go from the furthest point of the canopy out this way to the furthest point of the canopy out this way. And you're gonna bring it, take your two hands, you're gonna bring it into the center of this canopy. And then you're gonna come straight down, plumb bottom, straight down to the ground.
It's got sights on it, or gunning marks, or whatever you want to call them. This black line that comes across the saw right here and goes out, that's your sight. You can use that to guide the saw to make your face cut and put that tree where you want it. Something I learned this week. This handle right here is set for a 70-degree notch. If you hold it right there in that bend, that's 70 degrees. I never knew it. I've been fooling with saws for a good while, but I learned that. And anyway, you want to take it, come up to your tree, you got your target out there, get you a good stance, line it up, get it pointed where you want to go. All right?
Did good.
Y'all clear on that? All right, we're going to come down here and do I think you got to set up a spring pole demonstration. And then bring a horizontal line from the top of your bend over this way, kind of show where they meet, and then you want to bring a 45 line down, and that's where you want to cut your stump, or cut this. If you do it right, the stump should stand up, this should sit over, and should sit right up on top of the stump. One thing I made a note of that I don't remember us talking about it in class, but say this is a good scenario right here. These have got a lot of pressure on them. They can fly anywhere. Before I get started, I would go in here and clear me a good path off to the side of it where I don't have nothing around my legs, nothing that's gonna trip me up, because I'm gonna be standing like this, because I don't know where that thing's gonna go. And just kind of bumping it with my tip. You know, that's one of the things I feel we need to clean out around them, swamp out around them, as they called it in the book. That way you don't have any trip hazards or anything like that. Anybody got any questions up to that point?
All right, so after I do that, where do I need to stand before I start cutting with the tip?
You're going to stand back over here, 45-degree angle, back off to the side, back behind us is where you need to be standing.
With that right there, do you have a good side or a bad side that you could choose?
You could possibly look at your terrain and all that stuff and go from there. Like I said, if you can see an obvious twist in it, you know, sometimes I've seen them when they twist it over like this, and you know that thing's going to kick back this side. Kind of got to read it a little bit. If you think it's going to kick that way, stand over there, out of your way. These are hard to read sometimes with what you got. Tell me where to put my hand.
You come up the tree just a little bit. Just one more time. Right there.
Right there?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody agree with that? Good? Yes, no? Taylor, you good?
We're good to me.
Alright, let's see what we can do here.
So now you can just push it off. So you see the sawdust now? You can dig around on the sawdust there a little bit. That sawdust is holding that up. So you could go right at ground level or really below ground level in some cases.
Now, one question I got for you.
It was a great week up around a very historic Appomattox courthouse area, and the guys did a great job. Big thanks to Virginia DOT saw coaches from that district, and you saw a little bit in this video of what they have to deal with as far as storms. They have a lot of other tasks they have to do, and these guys are training to become instructors for their new workers and co-workers to be able to handle chainsaw situations out there on the roadways and byways of Virginia. So we appreciate you and for dropping by, and we hope you were able to pick up something from this video, and hope to see y'all somewhere along the ForestApps road.